A starving K9 German Shepherd is pulled from Rubble, but he refuses to leave until another dog is saved. They thought he was the last survivor. Buried beneath twisted steel and broken concrete for 2 full days, the K9 German Shepherd had been clinging to life, ribs visible beneath his dirt-covered coat, paws bloody from digging his way toward the faintest light. Rescuers wept when they finally pulled him from the wreckage of a collapsed apartment building, weak, trembling, and barely able to stand. But as they wrapped him in a warm blanket and tried to carry him away, something extraordinary happened. The dog resisted. He barked. He struggled. And then he turned back toward the ruins. He wouldn't move. Not until they understood. He wasn't alone. What rescuers found next would break their hearts. And yours. Before we begin, please make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. That helps us bring you more stories of loyalty, courage, and the bonds that refuse to break, even in the face of tragedy. It had been 42 hours since the building collapsed. The news cycle had already started to slow. Reporters packed up. Rescue teams rotated out. Hope, like the dust in the air, was beginning to settle. And yet, beneath the debris, something still moved. Corporal Dean Whitaker, a 34-year-old National Guard medic from Indianapolis, wiped sweat from his brow as he stepped over the cracked concrete slabs of what used to be Westview Towers. He was exhausted. His unit had already pulled out 9 survivors, 6 alive, 3 dead. The last body they retrieved had been a toddler, still clutching a stuffed rabbit. But now something stirred. A faint scratching beneath a steel beam, barely audible through the thick, choking silence. Dean crouched. "Hey," he whispered. "Is someone there?" Then it came, low, hoarse, desperate. A whine. "Dog," someone said behind him. Dean's heart kicked in his chest. He reached for his flashlight, slid into the narrow crevice, and aimed the beam downward. What he saw made his throat tighten. There, wedged between broken brick and a mangled pipe, lay a German Shepherd, thin, covered in grime. His eyes were glassy with exhaustion, but alive. One paw was shredded and bleeding. His body trembled from dehydration, but his tail gave a weak thump when he saw Dean. And around his neck, AK-9 unibadge. This one was trained, Dean muttered. "Get me a blanket, saline, and a muzzle. He might be in shock." 2 paramedics moved in quickly. They lifted the Shepherd slowly, carefully, and Dean kept whispering to him the whole time. "You're okay now, boy. I got you. You're out. You made it." They laid the dog on a stretcher, and as they began to pull back, the unexpected happened. The Shepherd snapped to attention, not aggressively, but purposefully. He barked, low, urgent. Then he lunged, not to attack, but to leap off the stretcher and back toward the debris. Dean caught him. "Easy. Hey, you're okay." But the dog was insistent. His muzzle pressed against the rubble. His nose worked frantically. His paws scratched the broken floor, sending clouds of dust into the air. "He's trying to go back in," a firefighter said. "He smells something," Dean replied. "Someone else." A decision was made. The search wasn't over. Dean got down on his knees beside the Shepherd and whispered, "You're not done, are you?" The dog barked once, short, sharp, focused. Dean turned to the team. "We go where he leads." They followed the K9's instincts. He limped forward, ignoring the pain, tail held stiff, ears up. Every few feet, he stopped, barked, then moved again, always toward the eastern wing of collapse, an area previously cleared and marked as unrecoverable. Dean felt something in his chest shift. This dog knew. He wasn't just reacting. He was communicating. 10 minutes later, they reached a large pile of debris. The Shepherd began digging, frantically, despite his injuries. His front paw bled freely, but he didn't stop. Dean pulled him back and ordered the rescue team to step in. They lifted wood, sheetrock, steel, then a faint sound echoed up. A whimper. Another dog, alive, trapped beneath a support beam. "Get the jack," someone yelled. They worked in silence, breath held. Finally, a small head emerged, a younger golden retriever. No badge, no tags. filthy but alive. She crawled out shakily and collapsed beside the shepherd. And then something happened that silenced the entire team. The German shepherd licked her muzzle gently, then curled his body around hers and closed his eyes. Dean knelt beside them, stunned. "You stayed for her," he whispered. Someone behind him murmured, "He could have gotten out days ago." Dean looked up, but he didn't. They named the shepherd Valor. And the golden? Hope. The emergency vet at the downtown field hospital had seen trauma before. She'd treated dogs who'd fallen through ice, been caught in wildfires, even shot. But she paused the moment she saw them. Valor, the battered K9 German shepherd who refused to be separated from the trembling golden retriever by his side. "He won't let anyone near her," she said softly. Dr. Eva Ramirez knelt beside the blanket, where the two dogs rested. Valor's chest rose and fell in shallow, strained breaths. His left paw was now wrapped, but his leg remained stiff. And yet, even in this state, he kept one eye open, trained on anyone who got too close to the young retriever. Dean stood nearby, arms crossed. He hadn't left the dog since the rescue. "He could barely walk," he said. "But the moment we tried to pull her away, he growled. Not out of aggression, out of purpose." Dr. Ramirez nodded. "Some dogs, they carry stories we'll never understand." Dean looked at Valor. "I want to know his." She tapped into the local database using the code on his collar. The badge had survived. It read, K9 Valor, ID 8497, registered with the city's search and rescue unit, she said. Assigned to Officer Rachel Myers. Deployed during natural disasters. Certified in locating both survivors and deceased. Dean felt a chill. Where's the officer now? Eva hesitated. Clicked deeper into the record. Rachel Myers died in the collapse. She was in the building. Silence hung in the air. Dean knelt beside the German shepherd. He was with her? Eva nodded. Most likely. He must have survived the fall and waited for 2 days. Dean swallowed. But then who's the golden? Eva frowned. She's not listed. No microchip. No registration. Stray. Maybe. Or maybe Rachel took her in before the collapse. They both looked at the two dogs. Valor's muzzle now rested protectively across Hope's shoulder, his breathing labored but steady. Dean whispered. He didn't just stay for her. He lost everything and still chose to save someone else. The hospital allowed Dean to foster them both during recovery. He didn't hesitate. He converted his small Indiana townhouse into a makeshift sanctuary. Blankets on every surface, bowls of filtered water, calming music. He even called off 2 weeks of military duty. Valor was the quiet one. He'd wake in the middle of the night and pace, sniffing the doors, the windows, searching, listening. Dean suspected he was still waiting for Rachel to come home. Hope, on the other hand, never left Valor's side. She was smaller, with soft golden fur that darkened at the tips, and the saddest eyes Dean had ever seen. She would press herself into Valor's chest every time he groaned or twitched. They were two halves of a broken world, but somehow they kept each other from falling apart. On the 10th day, something changed. Dean took them for a short walk around the block. Valor limped beside him, head low. Hope trotted just ahead. Suddenly, a car backfired. Valor dropped instantly, chest aground, tail tucked, ears pinned. But his eyes didn't show fear. They showed readiness. Dean realized what was happening. He's still on duty, he whispered. Later that night, Dean made a decision. He contacted the precinct where Rachel had served, explained the story, asked if he could access Valor's training files. They agreed. A former handler named Officer Jamie Chen came to visit. He was her shadow, Jamie explained, sitting across from Dean while Valor rested on the rug nearby. Rachel never treated him like a tool. He was her partner, her family. Did he have any surviving kin? Jamie shook her head. Rachel's parents are gone. No siblings, just Valor. And she loved that dog like her own blood. Dean felt a weight settle in his chest. He hasn't stopped looking for her, Jamie added. They sat in silence. Then Jamie asked, You keeping him? Dean glanced at the shepherd. now lying beside Hope, one paw touching hers. "I think he chose me," Dean said, "but I don't know if he's ready." Jamie nodded. "He may never be. Some dogs, they carry grief the way soldiers do." The next day, Hope began coughing. It started soft, barely noticeable. By the end of the week, it had worsened. Labored breathing, loss of appetite. Dean took her to the vet. Dr. Ramirez ran tests, and what she found crushed them all. Her lungs were damaged during the collapse, she said, probably from inhaling dust, smoke, and debris. "We're seeing signs of irreversible scarring." Dean clenched his fists. "There's treatment, right?" "A chance." Eva was quiet. "We can ease her pain, but it may not be enough." Dean looked down, and Valor whimpered. For the first time since the collapse, the German shepherd's entire body shook. He stepped between Dean and the vet, rested his muzzle on Hope's side, as if to say, "Don't take her from me. Not now." Hope nuzzled into him, weakly. Dean left the clinic in silence, driving them back to the quiet sanctuary he had built. That night, he sat on the floor beside them. He didn't speak. He didn't move. He just stayed. Because now, he understood Valor in a way he never had before. This wasn't just loyalty. It was love. And for the second time in his life, Valor was going to have to say goodbye. The winter air had turned sharp in Indianapolis, and Dean kept the thermostat higher than usual. Hope's breathing had become more delicate with each passing day, and Valor had refused to leave her side, even for a moment. She would wake coughing, soft and desperate, and Valor would gently lick her muzzle to soothe her. He nudged her water bowl closer when she couldn't reach it. He pressed his body behind hers when the shivers got too strong. It was as if his purpose had changed completely. He was no longer a rescue dog, no longer a K9 hero. Now, he was just a companion, a guardian, a heart refusing to break. Dean tried everything. Medications, nebulizers, soft blankets that smelled like lavender, even calming music during the nights. But nothing could stop what was coming. One morning, Hope didn't get up. Dean knelt beside her, heart already sinking. "Come on, girl." Her eyes were open but glazed. She tried to lift her head but whimpered and collapsed back onto the bed. Valor began to whine. Not loud, just persistent. His paws trembled as he lay beside her. His tail thumped once and then stopped. Dean called Eva. The vet arrived within the hour, carrying her bag with silent dread. "She's not in pain," she said softly, stroking Hope's ear. "But she's fading." Dean felt a lump form in his throat. "How long?" "Hours. A day at most." Valor seemed to understand. He pressed his face into Hope's fur, eyes shut tight, the way a soldier might say goodbye to a brother. Eva gave Dean the option. "We can help her go peacefully," she said. But Dean looked at Valor, and Valor looked back at him. "Not yet." They took her home. Dean dimmed the lights and placed them together on the floor by the fireplace. He turned off the TV. No music, just silence and the faint crackling of flames. Night fell. Hope's breathing grew slower, quieter. At midnight, she opened her eyes. Just for a moment, she looked at Dean, then at Valor, and then she gave a single, soft breath and let go. No sound, no final cry, just stillness. Dean sat frozen, hand over his mouth. Valor didn't move. He lay beside her for a full hour without blinking, his nose tucked under her neck. Dean placed a hand on his back. "I'm sorry, boy," he whispered. Valor closed his eyes, but he didn't sleep. The next morning, Dean buried Hope in the small garden behind the house, wrapped in a soft white blanket. He placed a stone above her resting place and carved a single word into it with his pocket knife. Hope. Valor watched from the porch. After that day, something changed in the German shepherd. He stopped eating. He refused his walks. He would go to the back door and lie down facing the garden, as if he was waiting for something or someone. Dean tried everything, new food, toys, even bringing in other dogs from the local shelter. Nothing worked. Valor had loved once, and he had lost twice. Dean brought him to the vet again. Eva examined him. Blood work, scans, everything. She shook her head. He's physically fine, she said, but he's shutting down. It's grief, Dean. Dean rubbed his face. What do I do? Let him grieve. But don't let him do it alone. So that's what Dean did. He slept on the floor, beside Valor. He read aloud to him. He played recordings of Hope's breathing, her soft barks. He showed him photos of Rachel, the officer who trained him, and told him stories. Valor didn't move much. But one night, 2 weeks after Hope's death, he stood up on shaky legs and walked to Dean's side of the bed. Dean woke to feel his warm nose pressing gently into his arm. You okay? Dean whispered. Valor sat beside him and laid his head in Dean's lap. It was the first time he had sought touch. Dean didn't cry, but something inside him healed. The healing didn't mean forgetting. Dean noticed that every evening around 6 p.m., the time when Hope used to curl up in her blanket, Valor would rise from wherever he was and sit by the fireplace. Every single day. He never barked. He never howled. He just waited. Dean bought a new blanket and laid it in the same spot, and Valor lay beside it, as if Hope's memory lived there, as if grief, in its most sacred form, wasn't just sorrow, but devotion. Months passed. Spring arrived. Valor began walking again, slowly, then stronger. He ate more. He barked at squirrels. He returned to the park. People smiled when they saw him, recognizing the dog from the news. But even as he walked among flowers and sunlight, his eyes always seemed to carry a shadow, the weight of love, of loss, of memory. Dean didn't try to erase it. He just walked beside him every step of the way. And sometimes when the wind was just right and the garden was quiet, he could almost swear he heard 2 sets of footsteps. Not just Valor, but Hope too, still running, still free, still remembered. It had been 5 months since Hope was buried in the garden. Spring had come in full bloom. The air in Indianapolis filled with the scent of damp earth and lilacs. The world moved on, but in Dean's house, time passed differently, slower, quieter, more deliberate. Valor had changed. He still limped slightly on his injured paw, but he walked with purpose again. He responded to his name. He had even learned to wag his tail again, though never with the same wild joy he once gave to Hope. Dean began bringing him to a nearby elementary school on Wednesdays, where he became a therapy companion for children with trauma. Valor would sit patiently as small hands brushed his fur, as shy voices whispered stories into his ears, as kids who hadn't spoken in months suddenly found words in his presence. He's not just healing, Dean said one afternoon to Officer Jamie Chun, who often helped with the program. He's giving. Jamie smiled. Dogs like him don't stop serving, even when they're broken. That evening, after the school visit, Dean drove home and parked outside the gate of his modest, ivy-covered house. Valor leapt out first, eager to get to his favorite spot, Hope's stone in the garden, but he didn't make it there. He stopped, stiffened, and growled. Dean stepped forward. What is it, boy? Then he saw it. A man, leaning against the fence at the edge of the property, wearing a dusty military jacket, a hood, and old boots. His face was turned away. Hey! Dean called out. Can I help you? The man didn't move. Valor barked sharply, tail high, body tense. Dean approached the fence with caution. Sir. The man finally turned. He had dark skin, short-cropped hair, and a sun-weathered face. His eyes were bloodshot, but familiar. Dean's breath caught. He squinted. You're not a stranger, are you? The man smiled faintly. I knew the woman who trained that dog. Dean blinked. Rachel Myers? He nodded. She was my sister. Dean froze. Rachel's brother? The man extended a hand. Elias Myers. I've been off the grid for a while. Got the news about the collapse late. Then tracked down what happened to Valor. And now I'm here. Dean hesitated before shaking his hand. I'm sorry for your loss, he said. Elias looked down. Me too. Valor stood perfectly still, ears tilted back. Then he took a slow step forward. Then another. He reached Elias and stopped. They looked at each other for a long time, and then Valor pressed his forehead gently against Elias's chest. Dean's throat tightened. He remembers you, he whispered. Elias smiled softly. I used to help Rachel train him, before I was deployed overseas. We were close. Dean studied him. Where have you been? Elias's face darkened. Prison. Wrong place, wrong time. Got out a month ago. I've been trying to put things back together. Dean nodded slowly. And Valor? I don't want to take him, Elias said. I just needed to see the last part of her that's still alive. They stood there in silence. Then Dean asked, Would you like to come in? Over coffee, Elias told stories Rachel had never shared, about how she rescued stray dogs as a child, how she used to sneak Valor into her dorm during training, how he was the only soul she trusted after their parents died. She didn't believe in easy answers, Elias said, but she believed in loyalty. She believed in dogs more than people. Dean smiled. I get that now. Elias looked around the house. His gaze stopped on the garden stone. That hers? Dean shook his head. Her name was Hope. Elias's eyes softened. So, even in the end, he protected someone. Dean nodded, right until her last breath. They sat in silence for a while. Valor rested between them, and then Elias leaned forward. I don't have much, he said. No house. No job yet. But if there's ever a day when you need help with him, or if anything happens to you, Dean cut him off gently. You'd take him in? Without question. Dean studied him for a long moment, then reached across the table. They shook hands. A quiet pact. That night, something shifted in Valor. He slept beside the front door, as if sensing someone new had joined the pack. Dean noticed it too. A calmness. A release. Hope's absence would never vanish. But now, the story had expanded, deepened, a new thread woven into the fabric of their grief. A few days later, Elias came by again. Then again, he brought tools, fixed Dean's broken fence, repaired the squeaky porch step, sat with Valor in the garden for hours, sometimes without saying a word. It wasn't long before Dean offered him the guest room. I know this is sudden, Dean said, but this house, it needs more than one voice in it. Elias hesitated, then nodded, and from that day on, the house felt different, not just a place of mourning, but of memory and redemption. Together, the three of them, man, brother, dog, began something new, even if they didn't know where it would lead. The call came at 2:41 a.m. Dean shot up in bed, heart pounding. Phone pressed his ear. This is Lieutenant Mercer from the Indianapolis Fire Department. The voice said, Are you the owner of the property on 212 Sycamore Lane? Dean's mouth went dry. Yes, I am. There's been an incident, a fire. We have responders on the scene. Please come immediately. Dean didn't even put on socks. He grabbed jeans, a jacket, and ran barefoot down the stairs. Elias was already in the hallway, half-dressed, gripping his phone. They locked eyes. The shop? Elias said. Dean nodded. Just a week earlier, Elias had opened a small automotive repair garage with help from Dean's savings and a community grant. It was their future, something to build, something clean, something honest. Now it was in flames. They sped across the city, sirens in the distance growing louder with each block. When they arrived, the fire was still raging, orange tongues of flame rising into the night, choking smoke billowing from a roof. Red lights bounced off everything, turning the scene into a war zone. Dean's throat closed. Elias stepped forward, eyes wide. We had tools, propane. Valor barked sharply from the back seat of the truck. Dean turned. Stay. But Valor didn't listen. The German shepherd leapt down, paws hitting the pavement hard. His ears were back, eyes locked on the building. Panic, alertness, purpose. Dean opened the door fully. Wait, were you? And then they heard it, a bark, from inside the burning structure. Dean turned to Elias. You didn't tell me there were dogs in there. There weren't, Elias said. I swear. But then he froze. His eyes went wide. No, he whispered. No, it's Smokey. He followed me yesterday. I let him stay in the back room. I was going to take him to the shelter today. I forgot. Dean, I forgot. Another bark. Weaker. Valor heard it too. He was already at the perimeter, pawing at the debris. Wait! Dean shouted. No, boy, stop. Too late. Valor dove into the smoke. The firefighters tried to stop him, but he was too fast, too driven, too determined. Dean ran after him, but was pulled back. You can't go in, a fireman yelled. It's too unstable. Dean shouted. That's a trained rescue dog in there. I don't care if he's trained to fly, it's not safe. Dean pushed forward, tears streaming down his face. But inside the fire, Valor was moving. He remembered this. The darkness, the heat, the collapse. But this time he wasn't trapped. This time he chose it. He followed the faint scent, weaving between flames and crumbling beams, lungs burning. And then he found him. A small mutt, black fur, curled in a corner behind a fallen toolbox. Whimpering, terrified, Valor nudged him. The dog didn't move. So he did what Hope once did for him. He pressed his body against the pup and barked into his ear. Twice. Louder. Finally, the mutt moved, staggered, and Valor began to lead him out. But something cracked above. A rafter. The ceiling. It gave way. And then the explosion rocked the block. Dean fell backward. Flames burst through the windows. No. Elias screamed. No. They pushed forward, but the firefighters formed a wall. Back. Everyone back. And then a shadow in the smoke. Small. Running. The mutt. Coughing. Limping. He collapsed at Dean's feet. Dean dropped to his knees. Valor. Nothing. He turned to fire. Valor. No answer. Then a second shadow. Larger. Staggering. Burned. Soot-covered. Bleeding. Valor. He made it halfway across the parking lot before collapsing. Dean caught him in his arms. Oh my God, oh my God. His fur was singed, one eye swollen shut, paws burned, breathing ragged. But alive. Dean screamed for help. The firefighters rushed in with oxygen, ice packs for fluids. They stabilized him, just barely. And when they lifted him onto the stretcher, something incredible happened. Valor raised his head and looked at Dean, not to say goodbye, but to say, I did it. And then he let his head rest. 3 days later, Valor woke in the animal ICU. Dean was there. So was Elias. And the mutt, now named Ash, curled at the foot of the bed. The vet said Valor had suffered second-degree burns, smoke inhalation, and severe trauma to his left leg. But he would live. Dean brushed his fur softly. You crazy, brave, beautiful boy. Tears filled Elias's eyes. He saved him. Dean nodded. He's always saving someone. They stayed there for hours, saying nothing, just watching Valor breathe. Weeks passed. Valor slowly recovered. Walks were short. Pain was constant, but he healed. He never barked again after that night, but he didn't need to, because when Dean looked in his eyes, he saw everything. The fire, the pain, the courage, the ghost of hope, and the truth that this dog had given everything twice, and still chose to stay. The summer came in soft that year. The garden was alive again. Green vines curled around the white stone that still read hope. Dean had planted marigolds around it, and Elias had added a small wooden bench beside it. The house, once filled with silence, now echoed with soft footsteps, wind chimes, and the occasional bark from a newest resident, Ash. Ash had healed quickly. The young black mutt followed Elias like a shadow now, never leaving his side. He had the heart of a wanderer and the eyes of someone who had seen too much too young. But the real center of the home remained Valor. Slower now, older, scarred. His eyes, once sharp and unrelenting, had softened. His left hind leg dragged slightly when he walked, and his once pitch-black coat had grayed around the muzzle. But when Dean looked at him, he still saw the same dog that had crawled from the rubble, stood between flames, and refused to leave hope behind. One afternoon, Dean sat on the porch, Valor's head resting in his lap. I've been thinking about what you've taught me, he whispered. Valor blinked slowly. You didn't come into my life by accident. I thought I was helping you. But you helped me survive things I didn't even know I was carrying. He ran a hand through the shepherd's thick fur. You taught me to stay, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. Behind them, the screen door creaked. Elias stepped out, holding 2 mugs of coffee. He handed one to Dean, then sat beside him, Ash settling at his feet. Storm's coming tonight, Elias said. Dean looked at the horizon. We've seen worse. They sat in silence, watching the clouds gather. That night, the wind picked up around 2 a.m. Valor woke before Dean did. He rose from his bed, slowly, stiffly, and walked to the back door. He sat by the glass and looked out toward the garden, toward Hope. Dean stirred minutes later, sensing something. He found Valor still there, still watching. Couldn't sleep? Dean asked, crouching beside him. Valor didn't move, just kept staring. Dean opened the door. The wind was cool, gentle. Valor stepped outside. He walked with purpose, though every step took effort. Down the path, through the grass, to the stone. He laid down beside it, just as he had the day she died. Dean stayed back, heart pounding. He knew. He didn't want to know, but he knew. Valor lifted his head once, looked toward the house, then at the sky. Then he let his head fall gently beside Hope's stone, and he closed his eyes. Dean ran to him, dropped to his knees, felt for breath, for a pulse. But there was none, just stillness, just peace. He pressed his forehead against Valor's chest. I wasn't ready, he whispered. I wasn't ready. Elias came running moments later. He saw Dean cradling the dog's body, and he dropped to his knees too. Ash sat down quietly behind them, tail still, head low. The wind moved through the trees like a sigh, like the final breath of a warrior who had given everything. They buried him next to Hope. No coffin, just a soft blanket and the metal he had earned but never needed. Dean carved one word into stone, Valor, and below it, the one who stayed. Weeks passed, then months. Life found rhythm again, but never the same rhythm. Dean kept a photo of Valor in the living room, next to Rachel's badge and a copy of the article that had once gone viral. Dog refuses to leave Rubble until another is saved. Ash grew quickly, sleek, sharp-eyed, playful but attentive. He never slept far from the garden. Dean often watched him in the evenings, lying between the 2 stones, as if guarding memory itself. One morning, Dean woke to a letter at his door, from a young soldier stationed in Colorado. It read, "My unit played your video every week. The one about the German shepherd. We called him the dog who didn't give up. He reminded us why we fight, why we come home. I just wanted to say thank you. He changed us, even though we never met him." Dean folded the letter carefully and placed it in the same box as Valor's collar. Later that night, he sat on the porch with Elias. The sun dipped low, setting fire to clouds. "You think they know?" Dean asked. "The ones we've lost?" Elias nodded. "Yeah, I think they know." Dean looked out toward the garden. "Sometimes I still hear him," he whispered. "So do I," Elias said. The breeze moved through the trees again. Not cold, not lonely, just present, like a breath still lingering, like a promise never broken. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to reflect on the loyalty and courage that still exist in this world. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and share this video with someone who believes in second chances, brave hearts, and the bonds that never fade. Because some stories deserve to be remembered, just like Valor, the one who stayed.